Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today, Joanne Smith. Joanne is the president of Price to Profits Consulting, formerly the DuPont corporate head of marketing and pricing, and the author of 2 books. She focuses on helping B2B companies transform their pricing performance. At DuPont, she was instrumental in creating the pricing organization, which transformed DuPont from weak to outstanding pricing performance. So with that, Joanne, welcome.
All right, thank you, Nick. So let me just start right off by saying, I'm seeing a lot of companies really embracing value pricing, and rightfully so, because there's good profit to be had here. But so often I'm seeing these companies struggle to get the bigger dollars that they thought were coming. And some of that frustration is the fact that many people in their organization are not adopting the methodology, or they get very frustrated as they try and quantify and have difficulty quantifying their value. And at times it goes into the sales folks. They've done good value-based pricing, but the salesperson struggles to actually get that price in the negotiation. So I'm going to talk about the 8 common pitfalls that I see across many of my clients. And I'm going to tell you, there's not a lot of rocket science to what I'm finding, but the fact that I am finding such consistency in issues tells me we really need to address them, and that companies that are putting in value pricing have to pay closer attention to some of the areas that I'll speak to. So when I talk about value pricing, in order to truly do it well, I actually think of this in 3 major buckets. Bucket 1 is all about actually quantifying, understanding needs, quantifying needs, driving all the way to the price point. But we also have to have a section where we're thinking about the value marketing selling side, or influencing our customers to believe the perception of value is there and is high. And the last part, which is often neglected, is we have to have the negotiation skills in our sales force to be able to really bring it home. So as I talk about this is presentation or a section is going to be done in 2 parts. Today, part 1, and in about a month with you, we'll do part 2. So actually part 2 is all of those kind of pitfalls I see actually in us setting the right value price. So again, that'll be in about a month. Part 1 that I'm talking about today is the fact that we often do a weak job of influencing the perception of value to the customer. We don't have, number 7, the confidence to truly win that full price at times in the negotiation. And then I'm also going to talk about sustainability and leverage, and how do we really make this a part of our culture, which covers across all 3 of these elements. So let's just start a little bit with the how do we get it into our value selling. And as background or grounding, I'm going to presume that the folks on this call know the basics, at least, of value quantification and how we use that quantification to understand our value and set our fair price. What surprises me quite often with customers is they almost think, a number of my clients think, hey, setting the price is the end game. That's what value pricing is about. And I would say, no, until we take it into value selling, we have not won the game. In a baseball vernacular, I would say loading the bases, having runners on first, second, and third base. That's like price setting. But until we hit them home, till we bring those runs in, we haven't got the dollars. So how well and effectively we take it into the value selling is often a weak point. So let me just kind of give you this example. And by the way, I'm going to cover a couple examples in this presentation. They are all based on actual real cases, but they have been modified. So we and sometimes blended of two cases to kind of hide the ownership back here. But let's look at this case. This is an existing product that's been sold for years to this customer, very large account. The product is superior in that it has higher purity and enables better mixing. It's going into the agricultural market, and this particular supplier had missed some orders in the last year, which caused the customer to lose orders in their sales process. Anybody that plays in the agricultural market kind of knows there is a short season, right? And if you don't have your products in time to treat the fields and the farmers' fields at the right time, you miss that sale for the whole season. So that's going on. Now the supplier has worked and improved their ability to hit these short or these high volume orders. But here's the challenge. The salesperson was challenged to go out and raise price 25% on this product. Now, if I was in sales, I would have no confidence that I could do that and do it effectively, given this set of facts. In fact, if I was able to force the customer to take it, I probably would have felt that if I didn't lose the account, I would have at least hurt the long-term trust and fairness with this account and hurt my long-term prospects. Yet, if we take that and we look at it this way, and the salesperson can show this kind of thing to the customer and say, look, our product has both purity and better mixing, and those things give you 4 key benefits that enable your product to be superior, and we believe that brings you 3 to 5% higher sales, giving you higher revenue to the tune of 3 to 5 million. We believe that, and we know that our product reduces your rework 7%. It processes faster 9%. You need to use 12% less of our product to get the same benefits. Those 3 reducing your cost to the tune of $200,000, $400,000, and $500,000 a year. If we look at that on a per unit basis, our total value with those things is worth $9. We are looking at a price here of $6.22. So if that is the story that we're now telling, I would contend that the confidence of the salesperson goes way up. The ability to win that account at that higher price goes way up. And in this particular case, they did in fact get that full 25% premium. But if we take a look at the full, if you will, value of doing the value selling well, one, I would tell you, I believe it stimulates a value discussion. And when we have that value discussion, why do I say that? More than likely, as you looked at that, as you heard me talk through that case, I should say, most of you probably had questions going through your head going, where did she get those numbers? Can she really prove that they have higher growth to that amount? The questions you probably had in your mind were very much about challenging the value case, understanding the value case, wondering if it was credible, which is exactly what we want to do with sales, as opposed to focusing on price. So just putting forward that case, even if we're not perfect in our math or our assumptions, we've turned the conversation to the value discussion we want. We've given salespeople the higher confidence. And one of the things it actually does is help improve customer trust and fairness, which is really big for the long-term relationship with a customer. When they can see we are setting price in a true fair way that compensates us for the value we've invested in delivering and yet provides this extra value, we get that trust. And the fourth area, of course, is when we do it and we do it in writing. it enables that buyer to internally sell the price increase. So they look good, right? If we don't do that, they may look bad inside their organization. So I use the word when we do it in writing. And I say that because when we do anything in writing, human nature is to consider it as more credible than when we only verbally tell our business case. So if we think about those sort of things, and this may be obvious to you, we're going to get better results. Unfortunately, this is what I often see. I see some group do price setting, and they may do an excellent job, but it is almost like they're throwing it across the wall to sales. So sales gets the final number. Here's the fair price. But their hands are tied in being able to really communicate and value sell it. Or when they do get good information or backup information, quite often it looks more like what I'm showing on the right-hand side. And on the right-hand side, notice in the kind of blue box, often they're told, well, here is our features, in this case, purity, tech service, that delivers value. And that value is worth this kind of dollars per pound of our product. Both of those facts are internal speak. Quite often, right? That's talking about your features, not the customer benefit. And even when we present it, and you can see the waterfall description here, even when we present it in waterfall version, quite often it is done on a dollar per unit basis. So a dollar per unit basis is still internal talk. It's not telling the customer what they saved. It's telling the customer what it's worth in per pound of our product. So less effective. And often if we look at the waterfall charts and we look at the actual features like the first one here, it is not unusual that I see not customer benefit at the bottom, but also the features. This one's done correctly. It says high growth. But more often than not, I see these waterfalls and they say high purity, better tech service, better mixing. They're still using internal language. So all of these things, I contend, create great frustration and hurt your credibility when you're talking to the buyer or to any person in the customer base. And I will tell you, when I see value price done and not well communicated over to the sales folks, in fact, let me say it this way. Quite often when I'm doing a training, as an example for a customer, they'll ask me to bring in one of their value-based cases and work it into the training. And I'm always delighted to do that. And I say, okay, describe me your case. I cannot tell you how many times when they give me the data, they give me the waterfall chart, that they might take an hour to 2 hours describing the case in a way I truly understand the benefit and some of the key assumptions that went into it. Well, that is just not effective. Never are we going to get an hour or two with a buyer. We should be able to tell our value case in a very clear way, driving within, I would say, 5 minutes, clearly and succinctly, and then in a little bit longer as we answer questions about key assumptions. If you can't do that, then for sure you are not able to communicate it to your customer and buyer in a way that's effective. So that's a good test. Go back to one of your value-based cases and have somebody describe it to you and how long it takes for you to truly understand and believe their value case, right? Should be simple. And I will tell you, if we look at a template that flows like this, right, and we force our folks when they're doing the value setting to put it in this way and to give it to our sales this way, so they are very clear about what is our feature, internal talk, the things that allow us to deliver the benefit. When they link it quite clearly and in talking customer benefit terms of what the benefit is in a quantified way, when they get really clear about why the customer should care, right? Is it increasing their revenue, reducing their cost, having their cash flow? And then talk about it in the actual dollars the customer serves or saves or makes before they put it in dollars per pound. This is a kind of framework that can allow a salesperson to very easily talk to their value case, right? Sounds simple. Very rarely is it done well. Now, I want to build on this just a little bit as we try and influence value in the eyes of our customer. So there are studies and coming out the Corporate Executive Board, also in the Challenger Sale book, that basically tell us that in B2B decisions, particularly if they're more complex, they're more important, unique propositions, if you will, the things that drive procurement decisions the most, that allow you to have better odds of winning that deal at the right price, are one, widespread support across the organization. So most procurement people today don't have the willingness to go out on a limb by themselves. They want to be sure when they make a decision, the organization is supporting it. Further, I will tell you, if you're selling unique products, there are a really good chance that 90% of the time, the procurement doesn't even have decision rights. They might tell you they do, but 90% of the time, the decision right lies back with the user, the business group. So this means we need to be selling not just at the buyer, but we need to do a better job of selling at the user business group first, right? And if we can do that, we're going to be more effective with the procurement side. Now, if we say, what are the things that drive users to really love us? And fortunately, they're the same things that decision makers and procurement folks like as well. Some of the key things that rise up is if the supplier can talk about the benefits and value case in financial terms to them. That's what value pricing does. If they can help the customer navigate alternatives. Always when we're talking value-based pricing, we're doing it against alternatives, so we should be able to do that well. And the other thing that pops up is when we can teach our customers something new, something valuable that allows them to win better. And I will tell you, in all the value-based cases that I've worked, the large majority of them have some teachable moment that the supplier learns while they're doing the value case that gives them a teachable moment with their customers. So all of our value-based information can hugely help us. But I would contend, sorry, I just flipped the wrong direction, that we're less effective if we think the salesperson is the only one that needs to be out there selling. The fact is, in your organization, you probably have many different roles that interface with the customer. Technical people to their technical people, product or market managers to the commercial people. All of those cross-functional folks that interface with customers have the opportunity to also reinforce our value, to sell our value, and do it in the kind of the best practice terms if we've brought them on board in this value pricing journey. And clearly, and we'll talk about this in part 2, many of those people are great sources of getting information to help us quantify value as well, because they have different avenues into the customer. So let me just talk a little bit more about the times where I think we get too internal focused in our communications, right? We talk features, we're supplier centric, And even though we're talking value, there are ways to get much more effective. So I'm showing a kind of a modified chart that came from a technical presentation to a customer. And they had a fantastic presentation, all sorts of teaching moments and great stuff. And this was kind of their final chart, bring it together, where they were comparing their benefits versus the alternative of a competitor, as well as their Gen 1 product. And you can see their Gen 2 has a lot more green X's, clearly better on the benefits they list. But let's look at those benefits. They are predominantly features. So, and my favorite is fast kinetics. So I don't know about you guys on the line, but when I hear fast kinetics, I don't have a clue whether that's a really good thing or a not so good thing. But I can be almost sure that most customers would not understand what fast kinetics really means to them. And for sure, buyers, or even once removed from people in the operations and in the business, so they are even less likely to understand feature talk, supplier talk, right? So if we're not able to describe our benefits in the ways the customer feels them, their internal customer speak, we lose so much of the message. You know, in this case, when I look at this Gen 2 product, I say to myself, well, how much more is that worth? Is it worth 2%, 20%, 100% more? We can't tell from this kind of a chart. In this case, it was actually worth 18%. And the business actually had the full value-based pricing case done. So they could have really taken what was a technical presentation to a commercial team and upped it even further. Now, I've already kind of talked to the left side of this chart that is customer-centric when we only talk dollars per unit of our product, when some of the waterfall element bars are features versus actual benefits. So we need to be sure we're really talking customer language. All right, I'm going to move on to my kind of seventh pitfall, which is around the confidence to actually win that fair price when we have it. So if we look at lots of studies that are out there, myself or other companies, 80% of companies believe they are more expensive than their competition. Right? Literally impossible. Right? 80% can't be more. Somebody's got to be cheaper. 80% of companies in price wars believe the other guy started it. It's never them. Again, impossible. Right? Very, very often our salespeople are taking behaviors that cause a more aggressive market unintentionally, right? And they have no idea, they don't realize that they are creating a more aggressive market and causing our competition to get more aggressive. Now, 75% of sales from the Bay Group studies have said they believe the buyer has more pricing power. So think about those three things. And I think you'll realize if you believe those three things, if that's your mentality, you're going to undermine your own confidence. A salesperson that thinks they're more expensive and the buyer has the power is just not going to be as effective in the sale. And of course, our buyers, who are professionally trained and getting smarter and smarter every year, do a phenomenal job of convincing us those things are real, telling us they only care about price, telling us we have no more value than competition, and they will switch for lower price, right? That's their job, to undermine our confidence. And most studies would say they're pretty effective at doing it. All right. So we need to get the money. As salespeople, we need them to have confidence, to have conviction, to have courage in their fair price. So I contend that actually comes in three ways. that the sales one has to believe that their price is fair, right? And value pricing certainly is a phenomenal way to help them do that. They have to believe their leadership is behind them in allowing them to risk some volume loss, right? Because if we push and we hold with conviction for our fair price, certainly there is a slightly higher chance that we might lose that account. So they have to believe that the leadership wants them to go after fair price and not always take the safest, lower price that they believe will get them higher share. And then the middle is the skills. So beyond value pricing skills, they need more skills to understand when do they have the power. And let me just kind of show you an example, again, a real example modified that maybe will bring this home. Again, this happens to be polymer, and it's going to a very powerful OEM. In this situation, it was a large account, had been an existing product for years. This supplier was a sole supplier, 100% of the account, right? They had a superior product, but now the competitor has come in and they threaten to say, if you don't lower your price, we're going to switch to the competitor. Now, this group did great value-based pricing. They did it, and they could prove and did talk to the fact that they had such additional value because of their superior product. And I'm showing the example there on that right. And then they went and set their price at 5% over the alternative. So think about that. They had enormous value, and essentially they didn't have the confidence to hold for their full fair price premium. They got a little, but what they actually did was they trained the customer that if they push hard on price, they will fold. They will lower away from their fair price. They've trained the customer that they will spend all sorts of money innovating new and unique and superior products, and then they won't charge the customer for them. They're essentially giving free all of this great innovation that they have invested in. So they've created, not only did they lose money in this deal, with this customer, every future deal, they are likely to have this customer find some competitor that they can use to threaten them because they know that they will back down on price, right? So that unintended consequence, losing this deal, create a more aggressive future market. So the skill that salespeople need is to know when they have pricing power. And probably most of you on the line have a lot of slightly unique or unique products or services, you know, and because you're listening in on value pricing, you likely have that. So odds are 90% of the time you have some pretty strong pricing power, right? Despite what our competition tells us. But to understand that power, it goes beyond just value differentiation. That's one piece. But we better understand customer needs-based segmentation, right? And who's truly a price buyer and who isn't. And I often see that not done well, where we overestimate how many of our customers are price buyers when they're not. They're just tactic they're using on us to convince us of that. We need to understand our competitive behaviors and how they'll respond and act in different ways. We have to understand price volume trade-offs for our specific products, amongst a number of other things. And when we understand that collection and have that skill, we have the power to know when we're in the driver's seat and should hold firm, should have the conviction. And then, of course, there's a skill set that says at times we might need to discount a little bit for right reasons. How do we do it in a way that doesn't cause a more aggressive market or more aggressive customers that really don't believe we're value pricers any longer? Do we walk away in some situations? Do we do a give and take? Do we do options? So there's a whole skill set that if your sales don't have, they're not as effective delivering those value prices that you have set. And if you're interested in learning a little bit more here, if you're attending the Professional Pricing Society next week, I'll be doing an all-day course there. ISBM is also hosting a open enrollment 2-day class in Pittsburgh in June. Those might be options to go a deeper dive. But let me switch on to the sustainability angle, the 8th area of the kind of pitfall areas that I see. So the drawing that you're seeing here is representing the life cycle of a product. The green box to the left is pre-launch. It's when we're innovating that product. And most companies start their value pricing with those new products. Absolutely the easiest way to do it, clean slate, set it out there in the market correctly right from the get-go. But if we think about it, most of our revenue, probably only 2-3% of our revenue in any given year, is from brand new products. The majority of it, 90+%, are our existing products. And if we don't get into doing existing products as well, we're never going to get the big dollars of value-based pricing. So we're going to have to go in and correct pricing on products that we put out there without getting our full and fair price. So you think about this, if you have hundreds or thousands of SKUs, and they're going to hundreds or thousands of customers, that is or can be a very complex journey, not an easy one. This is all about picking up a nickel here, a dime here, a dollar there, customer product by customer product. So in theory, this may seem easy, but in practice, handling this complexity is not so easy. And it takes good change management as a result of how long this is a multi-year journey. We have got to bring change management into this equation. So I'm showing you a kind of a modified change management profile with a number of key elements. And the blue is the typical change management profile that leads to failure. The orange is a profile that's been statistically proven to lead to success. So what typically happens looking at those blue bars is a company decides to go after any kind of change. In our case, we're talking value pricing. They have a vision. They got a compelling business case. Leaders are on board and talking about it like this is where we're going. Great. They start out with a bang, but then they don't follow through, and it turns into the program of the month or the quarter. And your sales and your technical people, they stand by and just kind of wait it out because they know the leadership is then going to be on to something else. Successful change management requires us to be strong in a number of other elements. And the one that has to be nailed extremely well is how we resource the change or the driving of value pricing in. Nearly 100% in a scale of how well you do it does it need to occur for success. But note, systems and structures are important. Monitoring progress and clearly making it last. And in here, perhaps in value pricing, you might think of that as predominantly around things like how well we train cross-functional people. And do we have the right incentives and motivations that occur? So in a moment, I'm going to talk in detail about how to get at that. But what I do want to say, anybody that does value-based pricing knows when we talk to our customer, kind of the overriding principle of our actions and our decisions are you get what you pay for. So if you want to pay less, Mr. Customer, you are going to get a lower value product, or you're going to get less services, right? You're not willing to pay, you get less. Well, that also applies when we think about our internal efforts to transform our culture to a value-based culture. If we don't want to invest in resources to help drive this change or systems to help us, we're just not going to get as much benefit, right? We reinvest less in the change, we will get less in terms of the earnings potential. So kind of the last chart here in this sustainability area. Some level of dedicated resources are absolutely critical to drive this in most companies that have any kind of a complex product customer mix. And so we typically need somebody of higher level to both lead and drive from a culture, a motivation, a what's next, getting leaders on board, getting people on board. But we also need somebody like a pricing manager to help with the doing, because value-based pricing is done, project by project by project, or I should say product customer combination by product customer combination. And it is often difficult to do well. We need somebody at a price management level to facilitate and or coach and or check those products and go in there and teach and help them upgrade them until it is really well embedded in our capabilities. So how you go about that, whether you have a full-time pricing manager and a part-time leader, and when I say a part-time leader, somebody that has sufficient time and motivation to proactively be driving things. I do not mean a sponsor who's standing in the back row going, yep, I'm with you. And, once a month might say to everybody, oh yeah, do this. I mean somebody truly proactively pushing at that upper level to make this occur. Secondly, cross-functional involvement. If you think this is only somebody that does price, or it is only sales that does the sale, you're not going to get the big dollars. We need to get all of those customer-facing people in, which typically are technical service, technical development, product or market management, and sales, and our pricing people at minimum to get what we fully need. Now turn to training. Training, I think, is a pretty critical factor for our cross-functional teams. I will tell you, at times I have people ask me and they want to do kind of more classroom awareness training for value-based pricing. And I will tell you, we can do it if we're only worried about awareness, right? Or they're on the periphery of helping to do this. But if you really want to embed it, I think your best money in the area of training is to absolutely do applied training. Train, and then, bring in active projects, let me say, into the training course and actually do a little training, work on a specific product, train, work on that product, and so that you're actually delivering a product. Because more than any other part of pricing, value pricing, doing it right is in the details, and you can't get to the details until you're trying to apply it. And last point here is around leverage. So again, if you have complex products and customers, you really have got to have processes and systems that are disciplined, that we can house all these cases so that we can very easily modify and leverage them to other products, segments, customers, right? And that is not easy to do, but I will tell you, Nick, here's a plug for you. That customers that I work with that have gone to a leverage point system, I see do so much better in many of the aspects that I'm talking about today, and the ones I'll talk about in a month, than those that use either their own Excels and or some other commercially available value-based systems. So that can be a really key piece that we might not need in day one when we're working some new products and we're learning. But if you really want to leverage it across complex businesses, you're going to need to go that way. So this is really, the summary in part 6, 7, 8 of my pitfalls. In a month, we'll look at those other 5 in the actual setting. And by the way, you might guess some of those things that happen in setting, if they're not done well, they flow over and certainly help hurt us in the ability to value sell. So Nick, how about if I turn it back to you?
Sounds great, Joanne. So thanks for sharing those insights, and appreciate the plug as well. So if you're interested in connecting or learning more, here's Joanne's contact information, and everyone will get the slide deck after the webinar as well. So you can just refer to this. Now, we've had a few questions come in during the webinar, and there's still plenty of time to answer your questions into the panel on the screen. While you're entering, just a quick reminder to complete the 10-second survey while exiting today's webinar to be entered into the raffle for 1 free copy of the Price Negotiation Playbook. We mail those out in a couple weeks, so just make sure you enter that survey. Now, to give you a couple more minutes to enter your questions, I'm just going to do a couple quick words on leverage point. And to start, we just want to start with the question, why use value? So Joanne went into depth about this, and there's a lot of research firms and vendors out there that agree on the importance of value. But why? Well, Forrester Research, according to them, the first vendor to succeed in communicating a vision of value to executives wins the business 74% of the time. On top of that, they found that only 22% of executive buyers feel that salespeople understand their issues and where they can help. So simply put, selling value helps win business. So where does leverage point come in? Well, we offer a SaaS solution that aligns product, pricing, marketing, sales enablement, and sales teams around creating, capturing, and communicating value. How does it work? First, product, marketing, and pricing team members build value models and messages, combine it with corporate branding and messaging to create a value proposition that helps sales tell a story. They then publish it into a cloud-based library that is accessible by every rep at your organization to customize in real time for each customer's problems and specific operating parameters. One high-quality value proposition can turn into multiple unique value propositions. The best way to drive deals and quickly qualified prospects is to digitally transform a generic case study into a specific buyer business case through effective customer conversations. Sales reps can start quickly by embedding baseline data from a case study into leverage point and change numbers in real time during the customer call in order to create a unique business case to buy that the prospect can then leverage internally to drive the deal forward. For account executives and sales reps, value propositions are useful early in the sales cycle as flexible case studies and call preparation and building sales confidence and qualifying opportunities and in engaging customer executives. For technical sales and pre-sales professionals joining the team in the middle of the sales process, value propositions provide customer value analyses as an important consultative selling tool to address pre-sales challenges. Finally, as customers decide to purchase, the value proposition becomes a shared business case, collaboratively agreed between sales executives and customer sponsors, and it serves as a buyer's internal financial justification to purchase and the sales team's asset in the price negotiation. So finally, who wins? Value propositions and leverage point can be linked directly to an opportunity in Salesforce and downloaded to a PDF or PowerPoint at any time as a personalized leave behind. On average, our clients achieve a 5 to 15% higher close rate and a 5 to 25% higher price when using leverage point value propositions. If you found any of that interesting, we'd love to have you enter our monthly raffle where we digitally transform one of your case studies free of charge. Just check the corresponding box in the exit survey upon leaving the webinar, or you can email us at casestudies@leveragepoint.com. So now it's time for the Q&A. So we have a bunch of great questions flowing in, so I'm going to be going through them right now. And first and foremost, as we always get, yes, the webinar is recorded. It's being recorded right now. And we're going to be emailing that out within the next 48 to 72 hours once we get the video and audio edited. And you'll be sure to get that in addition to the slides. So I guess the first question I'm seeing, so Joanne, this is a good one. What is the first thing you would say to a CEO who asks you how to reduce discounting?
Oh, Nick, that is a good one. All right. So if it's a CEO, I think there's three things that have to happen. From a CEO perspective, though, the most impactful thing is the culture the leadership sets on whether they are willing to risk, if you will, volume versus making sure that they pick up every bit of share. So more powerful than understanding whether you have a fair price or having the negotiation skills in your salesperson people is what leaders do to set the stage that says, right, this is not about buying share. This is about truly getting our fair price, and I am willing to risk losing volume to get my fair price.
Great, great answer. I see another one coming in, and this is actually a really interesting one. So I'm a premium supplier, so I'm guessing that means at top of the market. What are some good ways to gain support from buyer executives?
All right, so from buyer executives, and I talked with this, through the webinar, but what number one would be, make sure you're selling your value case in the organization, right, before you get to the buyer. Absolutely critical. And then all the things we've been talking about in writing, not verbally, we need to have our value case quantified as best we can and as clearly as we can so that we can talk it in customer terms, not our own internal terms. So that would be kind of key.
All righty. This is another good, oh, sorry. Were you still going?
No, go ahead.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was worried I was cutting you off for a second. All right, so this is actually a really interesting one. So are there attributes that identify certain types of offers as good or poor candidates for value-based pricing? And the example given is that offers that have a high variability in the value achieved by different customers using the same offer, or offers that are sold in high volume with direct minimal sales engagement.
The second part was reread the second part of the question.
So the second part would be offers that are sold in high volume with direct minimal sales engagement. All
right. Well, clearly, right, in value-based pricing, we're going to get our best benefits when it's a unique product out there. When you talk about particularly cases where it has very different value to different market segments or different customers, boy, that is like an ideal case where you absolutely want to bring in value pricing, and you're going to bring in not only the basics of value pricing, but some strategy, some segmentation around how you do it. Because the second part of what I heard in that question was when you are selling the exact same product, right? And that can certainly get us into trouble if we're selling the exact same product at different price points without some sort of fences or variance in the services we provide or the features that are in that offer, if they potentially are going to customers that are going to hear about each other that could buy from different sources. So great opportunity. It takes a little more in-depth skill to handle that one. When we get to large volume buys, and if we're doing large volume buys that go indirect, maybe it's an online even selling, completely indirect, if you will. Does that mean we can't have value-based selling? I would say no. I mean, we can still do value-based selling there if, in fact, we go back to kind of customer segmentation. If we realize there's a group that is very, very price sensitive, perhaps, there's others that like certain value, and such the way that we can present our offers, even if they're like 2 different or 3 different, more ideally 3 different offer choices. One might be fully stripped down with no services. One might be a slightly lower product than the other product. And when we can offer them even on a website, and we see that in our everyday kind of buy. You go out to buy a paint for your house, or you're buying a washing machine. You can Google that, and often you will see slight variances, but differences in kind of the offering choices that you can get, low price to high price, and the low price is slightly less value, either in service or product, than the best, can be great ways of adopting value-based pricing concepts into what we do.
All right. I think we have time for one more, and I think I like this one, and Joanne, I think you will too. Just it's very to the point. So, what type of pricing impact from value-based pricing are you seeing among your clients?
All right. So, you talked about with leverage points saying that 5 to 25% typical, and I see a lot of that. But Nick, I see at least 10% of the time that the value pricing is higher than 25%. So I think you're a little conservative in your range, is what I guess I'm saying. Now, at times when it is higher than 25%, sometimes the client, for good reasons, elects not to go for that, say, a 45% increase all in one fell swoop. At times they absolutely can, but at times they might split it depending on the situation. So it might take over 2 price cycles for them to get the full value. But here's one thing I just kind of want to share, because I think it's so interesting. When I'm doing training courses, we always do a role play in there, and I set up the seller with a value-based case, and they have the full value price setting and the pictures and the background. And then I set the buyers up separately. I take them out of the room first, and I basically tell them, you've got a competitor that you haven't used yet that is 10% cheaper, claims they have all the identical value, and you're not going to accept that higher price unless they convince you they truly have extra value that you care about. And you ought to be really tough in these negotiations, because you're not going to accept this if you don't have it. And what I find, and then so now we got hundreds and hundreds of data points that basically say that 90% of the time the seller is successful getting the higher price with the value case, and about 10% of the time they don't get it, and the buyer switches to the lower price. And when I ask to both groups, why did this happen? Almost 100% of the time, when the buyer has moved away to the cheaper option, the salesperson never showed them the value-based charts that I gave them, never showed them in writing. Sometimes they verbalized it, right? But they've never shown it in writing. Anytime that they have shown the value case in writing, they have been fully successful in getting the higher price. So just interesting how it plays out so dramatically and statistically strong in a classroom setting.
Well, I think that's fantastic, and I think that's a great place to just to wrap the Q&A. So I'm still seeing some questions fly in. What we like to do here is we're going to take all these questions. Some of them look like they're directed to us and some to Joanne. So we'll sort through those and try to get the right person to reach out to you directly and get the answer. So appreciate all the questions that have come in. One last thing before we go is our next webinar. So as we've talked about a few times, there is a part 2 to this. And we're going to be hosting it for those of you in the US right after Memorial Day weekend on June 4th. That's a Tuesday, same time. And if you'd like to sign up in advance, just simply fill out the registration survey and indicate that you'd like to sign up for that right after the webinar. One more quick plug, looking a little further ahead, is we've got a really exciting event we're planning for late June. We'll actually be hosting a panel of leverage point customers, and they'll be discussing their experience in introducing and implementing value in the sales process. We'll have more to follow on that one as well as the specific panelists, but we're really excited about both of these events. And we're especially thankful for Joanne for joining us for both events. So in conclusion, that is it for us today. Thank you everyone for joining and have a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you, Joanne, for your insights and take care.
Thank you, Nick.